Everyone thinks they know how to store an onion, but almost everyone gets it wrong. You bring home a big bag of fresh onions because they looked cheap and healthy at the market. Within 2 weeks, half of them turn soft, sprout green shoots, or leak a strange liquid. My name is Stephen, and I have spent the last 20 years working in kitchens, testing storage methods, and watching thousands of onions either survive or spoil under my care. Today, we are covering everything you need to know to keep onions fresh for months, whether you buy a small bag or an entire crate at once. First, we will cover a simple drying step that takes only 1 day but dramatically increases how long any onion lasts in storage.
Before storing any onion long-term, there is one preparation step that matters more than any storage container or method. That step is drying, and skipping it is the biggest reason storage methods fail, even when people follow every other instruction correctly. When you bring onions home from the store, remove them completely from their plastic mesh bag first. Spread each onion out on a layer of newspaper, making sure none of them touch each other directly. Place this newspaper somewhere shaded, away from direct sunlight, but with plenty of open airflow around it. A covered porch, a shaded balcony, or a well-ventilated room all work perfectly for this step. Leave the onions there for a full day, allowing the outer skin to dry until it feels papery and slightly crisp to the touch. This drying process removes surface moisture that would otherwise trap bacteria and mold once the onion goes into storage. Many people skip this step because it feels unnecessary, assuming a quick wipe with a towel does the same job. Unfortunately, wiping only removes visible water while leaving deeper moisture trapped beneath the surface layers. Proper air drying pulls that hidden moisture out slowly and evenly, strengthening the outer skin as a natural protective barrier. Another critical mistake happens when people wash onions before storing them for the long term. Washing feels like good hygiene, but it actually introduces extra water into the crevices between skin layers. That trapped water becomes an invitation for mold, even if the onion looked perfectly clean beforehand. The rule here is simple and worth repeating. Never add water to an onion you plan to store for weeks or months. Save washing for right before you actually cook with it, not before storage begins. If you notice a small amount of white or gray powder on the outer skin, do not panic immediately. Peel back 2 or 3 outer layers and check what lies underneath. If the inside feels firm, smells normal, and shows no discoloration, the onion remains perfectly safe to cook and eat. Only throw away onions that feel soft throughout, smell sour or rotten, or show dark, wet spots reaching deep into the flesh. This one-day drying habit takes almost no effort, but creates the foundation for everything else in this video. Once your onions are properly dried, they become ready for whichever storage method fits your specific situation, which we'll cover next. If you only buy a handful of onions at a time, this first method might be the easiest and most satisfying trick you learn today. All you need is an old pair of stockings or pantyhose, the kind that developed a small hole and got pushed to the back of a drawer. Take one dried onion and drop it into the toe end of the stocking. Tie a simple knot right above that onion to hold it firmly in place. Drop another onion into the stocking above that knot. Then tie another knot above the second onion. Keep repeating this process, adding onions one at a time and tying a knot after each one, until the stocking is full or you run out of onions. The final result looks a bit like a strange chain of knots, almost like beads on a string, but this shape serves a very practical purpose. Hang the finished stocking somewhere with good airflow, such as a hook on a pantry wall or inside a well-ventilated closet. Because each onion sits separated by a knot, air can circulate freely around every single one. This constant airflow prevents the moisture buildup that causes mold and softening in tightly packed bags. Even more importantly, if one onion in the chain does eventually spoil, the knots stop the damage from spreading upward or downward. In a regular mesh bag, one bad onion often ruins several neighbors through direct contact. With this method, a single spoiled onion stays completely isolated, protecting every other onion in the chain. When you need an onion for cooking, simply cut below the lowest knot with a pair of scissors, releasing just that one onion. This grab-and-go system keeps the rest of the chain undisturbed and still hanging safely in place. Many people find this method oddly satisfying, almost like a small kitchen decoration that happens to be extremely practical. It works particularly well in small kitchens where counter space feels limited, since the chain hangs vertically rather than taking up shelf room. This method suits households buying smaller quantities regularly, rather than stocking up on large amounts at once. For bigger batches, though, a different approach works better, which brings us to the next storage method designed specifically for bulk quantities. When you buy a large box or crate of onions, the stocking method becomes impractical simply due to sheer volume. Instead, a repurposed cardboard box becomes your best tool for keeping large quantities fresh for months. Find any sturdy box lying around the house, whether it originally held online shopping deliveries or fresh fruit from the store. Using scissors or a small knife, cut several holes along each side of the box, each hole large enough to fit 2 or 3 fingers through comfortably. These holes create essential airflow, letting moisture escape instead of building up inside the enclosed space. Next, line the bottom of the box with a layer of newspaper or paper towels, materials that naturally absorb excess moisture over time. Take your dried onions and wrap each one individually in a single sheet of newspaper before placing it inside the box. This individual wrapping acts like a personal moisture shield for every onion, absorbing dampness before it can cause harm. Arrange the wrapped onions in a single layer across the bottom of the box. Then cover that layer with another sheet of newspaper. Add a second layer of wrapped onions on top, repeating the same process, but try to stop after 2 or 3 layers total. Stacking too many layers creates pressure and heat buildup near the bottom, undoing much of the benefit from proper wrapping and ventilation. Store the finished box in a cool, shaded location, such as a covered balcony or a shaded corner of a garage. If possible, place the box on a small stand or a few wooden blocks, lifting it slightly off the ground. This small gap prevents rising moisture from the floor from reaching the bottom layer of onions inside the box. There is one crucial rule to remember when using this method. Never store onions next to potatoes. Onions release a natural gas that speeds up sprouting in nearby potatoes, causing them to grow shoots much faster than normal. At the same time, potatoes release their own moisture, which softens and speeds up decay in any nearby onions. Keep these two vegetables stored completely separately, even if it feels convenient to group all your root vegetables together in one spot. Following this box method properly can keep bulk onions fresh and firm for 2 to 3 months, sometimes even longer depending on your climate. This method works best for larger households, people who cook frequently, or anyone taking advantage of seasonal bulk pricing at local markets. Here comes the most important part of this entire recipe, something learned only through years of repeated experimentation and mistakes. Fresh onions contain an enormous amount of natural water, much more than typical fruit used in fruit syrups. Because of this extra water, you need significantly more sugar than usual, or the mixture will spoil instead of properly fermenting. For every measure of onion by weight, use an equal measure of sugar by weight as your basic starting ratio. Then add an additional 10 to 20% more sugar on top, specifically to handle that extra natural liquid. Mixing plain white sugar with a small amount of raw cane sugar or syrup often creates a smoother, richer final flavor. Layer the sliced onions and sugar together inside a large, clean glass or ceramic container, alternating layers as you go. Add sugar generously between each layer. Then finish with an extra thick layer of sugar, covering the very top completely. This top layer eventually dissolves downward, but starting thick prevents the bottom layer from ever running short on sugar. It's worth pausing here for an important safety note before moving further into the fermentation process itself. During the first month, this mixture produces natural gas as fermentation begins, similar to how bread dough rises using natural yeast activity. Never seal the container completely airtight during this early period, since trapped gas can cause pressure buildup inside sealed jars. Use a container designed for fermentation, or simply keep the lid loosely twisted rather than fully tightened during this stage. After about 4 days, Check the container, and you will likely see sugar collecting heavily near the bottom already. Stir the entire mixture thoroughly at this point, redistributing sugar evenly from top to bottom throughout the container. At this stage, add just a small pinch of salt, which might sound strange for something meant to taste sweet. That tiny pinch of salt actually enhances the overall sweetness, making flavors taste rounder and more balanced rather than flat. Seal the container loosely again and store it somewhere cool and dark, allowing fermentation to continue undisturbed for months. Around 100 days later, strain the liquid away from the solid onion pieces, keeping the syrup in a separate container. This finished syrup should always live in the refrigerator afterward, sealed tightly, to prevent it from turning sour too quickly. One final, important reminder. This syrup contains real sugar and works as a natural sweetener, not as medicine of any kind. People managing diabetes or other health conditions should use it sparingly, treating it purely as a substitute for regular table sugar.